Good evening. A couple nights ago, I spent several hours, I believe, working on a video that to me was a really, really important video. And my computer ran out of disk storage space or something. And all those hours were in vain, I guess, because it did not save the videos I recorded. Anyway, so I'm trying again. It was kind of disheartening, and I got an external storage device and transferred all my former videos onto that, so hopefully this will work. The burden I have for this video is developing further support for my claim that Steven Hassan's BITE model matches the high control tactics in the local church, the Lord's Recovery, and the teachings of the Living Stream Ministry. So the BITE model from Steven Hassan is a study of how high control or authoritarian groups control behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions to a degree that is not normal in social circles. And this is very much the case in the local church. So let's start with the B, behavior. Behavior in the local church, behavior in the Lord's Recovery, and in the teachings published in Living Stream Ministry is highly controlled compared to typical social circles. I have been in meetings where how long one holds the refrigerator door open is talked about. Definitely there's a very common phrase used of you have to follow the feeling in the body, but that's about pretty much everything. What you drive, what you wear, what you listen to, where you live, how you do your hair. It's the feeling in the body, or it's just directly talked about. What age people should be when they get married. I've heard that discussed, or talked about by Witness Lee. The age that sisters should be, the age that brothers should be, that sisters should not have a higher degree than their husband, academic degree. Definitely a lot of speaking, as I've mentioned in the past, about how sisters should behave, what they should, or how they should not say anything, even if they are aware of very negative, very serious problems among elders. They should say nothing except to the Lord. Anyway, there are probably countless testimonies of people who have experienced high control that affects their behavior. Specifically, in Jane Anderson's book, The Thread of Gold, she talks about how they moved, or they had people live with them based on what the brothers told them to do or not to do. And how finally, when they decided to not live near a campus, they did that without talking with the brothers, and that was considered extremely offensive in the church. Before I got married, Andrew Yu told Donnie and me that we should have people live with us as much as possible. I would say that rescued us. For some years in our marriage, having brothers live with us was a help, because I do believe I was treated maybe a little bit better because people were around. And once we were empty nesters and no one was living with us, it was not a healthy situation. And at one point, a brother asked me if he could move in with my husband and I, and my husband said no, he wanted the house to ourselves. But this is around the time that the treatment got a lot worse. But corporate living is what it's called, is highly encouraged for couples to participate in, to have people live with you. I will also just give another anecdote. And some people have actually mentioned in their comments the way I talk. The way sisters talk in this group, it is hard to fully heal from the effects of this group on our behavior. And there was a time when I went to a couple's home. I was either a trainee or a recent graduate from the full-time training. And a brother followed me out of their home, the husband of this couple, and just said, "Ruth." I said, "Yes." He said, "Is this your normal voice?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Pray in that voice." And it was a hard word to take because it was honest, and I realized that I changed my voice when I'd pray. He said, "Don't change your voice." But I didn't do it purposely. This group has an effect on the behavior that, I would almost always cry for quite a few years or quite a few times when I would share in a meeting, I would cry. But part of it is you're just so pitiful as a sister, especially. You're so pitiful. You feel so worthless. And that affects one's behavior. So I answered the phone kind of recently with somebody who was a child in this group, and I answered like, "Hello." She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh, nothing." She goes, "See, this voice, it's the voice that Keith Valenza addressed in Imperfect Strangers and in his newspaper article stories segments, that the sisters had this unusual tone. I have literally interacted with sisters in the church that I never heard them speak like other than this type of tone. Never. It was sickening. But that's part of this group, what it does. Even the way brothers, "Amen, brother." There's this strange tone. Odd behavior, very odd behavior. But in addition to odd behavior, there's also control of behavior, a dictating of choices that should be made by individuals without them feeling guilty and that they're somehow not following the sense of the body. I'll give one more example, and that is that when a younger relative to Steve Isett, was seeking brothers to read what he had written, saying, this is not at all poisonous. And he would get this from elders. Elders would tell him, or at least I know of one elder, said, "Oh, I agree with you, but I just have to follow the feeling in the body." And that was basically to shun a brother who is expressing very, very legitimate and necessary, important concerns on his heart. I'm rewatching this and need to add that who one marries is also, I won't say completely controlled, but there's undue influence related to this matter. There's a high level of influence. One is encouraged to fellowship with the elders if they're interested in somebody. The elders may try to discourage that person from pursuing someone that they care about. I know of several situations where elders tried to convince someone from marrying the one they loved, even telling, in one case I'm thinking of, actually two cases, telling the wife not to marry the brother that she loves. And in both those cases I'm thinking of, the wife went through and married the brother she loved, and those families are still, they have children, and they're very, very happy and blessed. Probably go through all kinds of hard things still, because that's normal for marriage life, but may they continue to be happy and blessed in the Lord, marrying the person they loved, not the one that the elder was trying to arrange for them. And also in marriage life, a lot of controlling advice and behavior I've even received. Thank God I met with one sister in the church when I was going through my crisis, who told me, you can't be a marble Mary and you can't be a robot. At different times in our conversations, she would say those things. You can't be a robot, and then you can't be a marble Mary. But I would hear from brothers things like, it's good. The Lord is honoring you by putting you into this situation. It's so good that your husband's still initiating contact. I was told if I don't get rid of my dog, I'll never know what Jesus can be to me, by a brother who's both a medical doctor and a coworker. If I don't get rid of my little dog, who is right here, then I'll never know what Jesus can be to me. That is a high control behavior, someone trying to control my behavior, that I'm so thankful I did not follow his, quote, fellowship. So that's behavior, and those are just a few examples. I would really love to, for any of you to put in more examples related to behavior being controlled. But yes, haircuts, brothers not having facial hair is spoken about. Not having ears pierced, not wearing makeup is talked about. Anyway, just a lot of things. Okay, then information. Information is a huge item that is controlled in this group. And in Stephen Hassan's model, the control of information affects behavior, thoughts, and emotions. You aren't getting accurate information to make proper choices in your behavior, to think accurately and properly, and nor to feel properly, because we are made to respond to the information we have. But if information is withheld, it affects everything else. It skews everything else. It is a factor of controlling everything else. So I have an excerpt here. This is from Our Urgent Need, Spirit and Life, and it's under a subtitle, Our Shortage of the Spirit. Witness Lee says, today the saints in the churches may have too much knowledge, too much terminology, and too much discernment exercised toward others rather than toward themselves. This kills the churches and the saints and annuls the things of the divine life. Whether we are right or wrong, good or bad, doesn't matter. We are short of the Spirit. We must stop all deadening talk. This will be our rescue. Our deadening talk will be used by the subtle one, the old serpent, to spread his deadening poison. What we need is the Spirit. We should forget about everything else and simply call upon the name of the Lord. From now on, I hope there will be no more negative talk. Whenever you hear something negative, remind one another not to talk in this way. Say something positive, wonderful, and beautiful. Then we will see the churches flourish. We should remind one another to avoid negative talk and keep ourselves filled with the Spirit all the time. Avoid anything negative, any negative speaking. That anything negative just spreads death. It's just poison. It's just rebellion. Not just it. Anyway, it's a very serious offense to hear anything negative or to say anything negative. But what if you, for instance, in my case, have been abused? What if you were sexually assaulted by the manager of the Living Stream Ministry, but you are in a group that says, whenever you hear something negative, remind one another not to talk in this way. Say something positive, wonderful, and beautiful. Well, this is what I grew up in, and it's partly why I couldn't speak about what I went through for over 30 years, because I bought into this, not saying anything negative and not hearing anything negative. So that's a huge factor controlling information. Another teaching that controls information is the matter of covering the leading ones. Don't say anything, because it was Ham who said something to his brothers, and he was cursed, even though his son Canaan was cursed. But anyway, another thing that is taught that controls information is people are highly discouraged from having TVs. Now that's kind of outdated. Many people don't have TVs, but they have the internet. And it would be interesting to hear what people are told to hear on the internet. But definitely you are not to take in other Christian information, and for sure not read anything, quote, negative from other believers about our group, quote, our group. So the control of information is huge. Lawsuits are filed if there's information out there that may be completely factual, actually, or even be less extreme than it could be, and yet those people are taken to court because the information is not favorable to the leadership and to the image that they want to maintain of the group. And my videos, these are a source of information, but most people in the Lord's Recovery, the local church, would not dare to watch one of my videos. And this is partly why I encourage comments, even if they're not favorable, because at least I know someone in that group actually listened. But it's really rare. This group is thousands and thousands of people, and I know personally thousands of people, yet very few, even of those who know me quite well, would actually listen to my videos because of the control of information and the high control teaching that you not hear anything negative. Okay, then related to thinking, the control of one's thoughts. We are taught to get out of the mind. And I want to read some excerpts. With the brothers, the problem is the mentality. Most of the brothers have a big head, always thinking and considering. Many brothers are great teachers in their own opinion. The brothers have many thoughts, opinions, considerations, and ideas. When anything happens to a brother, the first thing he spontaneously does is exercise his mind. Sisters have weeping eyes, but brothers have rolling eyes. While their eyes are rolling, their minds are exercising, thinking, and considering. It is difficult to convince the brothers in their thoughts and considerations, so we must often reason and argue with them. They need a strong reason to be convinced because they are more in the mind. Okay, then there's another part. That was from Basic Principles of the Experience of Life by Witness Lee, under the subheading Denying Ourself. Now here is one that is from Life Messages, Volume 1, and it is called Disregarding Our Mind. We may realize that the spirit is the switch, but throughout our daily life, we use our mind, not our spirit. Even while we are sitting in the meeting, our mind may be on other things, or we may be listening to the message with our mind, checking out the scripture references, and trying to determine if what is being said is right. The outcome of exercising our mind is invariably questions arise. God would have us turn away from the considerations in our mind and exercise to touch Him, to taste Him, and to find out His will. Okay. This is from The Experience of Christ as Life for the Building Up of the Church, allowing the Lord to take over our mind, emotion, and will. Our mind must also be possessed by the Lord. It is wrong that we are in the mind daily. As those who are seeking the Lord, we must exercise to be in the Spirit all the time. When we are in the Spirit, we will forget about everything but Christ. We must ask the Lord to be merciful to us so that we may surrender our mind to Him. We should say, Lord, take over my mind. And in Basic Principles of the Experience of Life, I'll just read a little more. For a brother who is too deep in his thoughts, to deny his self is to deny his mind, his mentality. It is to lose his head. I would hear often, if you're thinking, you're not drinking the Spirit. Get out of your mind. Turn to your spirit. To turn to your spirit and to get out of the mind are not scriptural. Anyway, so Then emotions. I'll just read some portions, but we are definitely shamed for being in our emotions, or even for having emotions or speaking about emotions. I'm a big fan of Mark Brackett, who wrote Permission to Feel. Social scientists have done studies that being able to name your emotion, there's ruler, recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotions. That's healthy. But to just deny and not to label and not to recognize, that actually can make someone very sick. And yet Witness Lee would teach, don't say you're depressed, say you're in the heavenlies. If you say you're depressed, then that'll make you depressed. I understand that sometimes we need to speak positively, but depression was not allowed to be recognized, at least as I was growing up, and there was a lot of depression. I'm quite sure of it. Okay, so let me read a little bit about emotions here. The believer's emotional life. This is from The Spiritual Man by Watchman Nee. Emotion may be considered as the greatest enemy to the life of a spiritual believer. A believer should walk according to the Spirit. To do this, he must heed every leading of the Spirit within him. The sense of the Spirit is gentle, fine, and keen. Unless the believer attentively waits to receive and discern the revelation of his spiritual intuition, he can never obtain the guidance of his spirit. Hence, the total silence of the emotion is a prerequisite to walking according to the Spirit. The total silence of the emotion. The small and delicate sense of the Spirit is often confused and ignored by the believer because his feelings are roaring like billows. We cannot ultimately attribute any fault to the softness of our spirit's voice. Actually, we can adequately feel the sense of the Spirit, but when other feelings are mixed with it, we cannot possibly have discernment. Whoever keeps his emotion calm will see that it is easy to detect the voice of the intuition. The rising and falling of the emotion not only hinders the believer from walking according to the Spirit, but also directly causes him to walk according to the flesh. Since he cannot walk according to the Spirit, he naturally walks according to the flesh. If he cannot secure guidance in his spirit, he naturally walks according to the impulse of his emotion. Whenever the Spirit ceases to guide, the emotion starts to guide. An emotional believer can be likened to a pond full of mud and sand. As long as no one comes to disturb the water, it looks clear, but once it is disturbed, it becomes muddy. In Basic Principles of the Experience of Life by Witness Lee, he says, with the sisters, the problem is emotions. I sometimes tell people that in order to convince a sister, you should not argue with her. That does not work. You simply need to drop 2 tears. That is the best weapon to fight the battle. If you drop some tears, all the sisters are captured because they're mostly emotional. When something happens to a sister, she will most often exercise her emotions first. What then is a spiritual person? A spiritual person is an emotional sister who has been delivered from herself. Whenever something happens to her, she first exercises not her emotions, but her inmost part. When someone comes to her with tears, she is not moved by tears. Even as a sister, she does not exercise her emotions. Rather, she exercises her inmost part and denies her emotions, even in the presence of tears. She does not regard the tears, but exercises her spirit in which the Lord dwells. This is a spiritual sister, not an emotional sister. However, to say this is easy, but to practice it is very difficult for the sisters. The sisters should take the brothers as their head, but nearly all the sisters take their emotions as their head. If sisters would put their emotions under their feet and exercise their spirit, making their spirit the head of their being, they will be spiritual. Okay. I want to read just a little bit more that captures Witness Lee and Watchman Nee, the Living Stream Ministry, overall teaching related to the believer and the problem with the mind and the emotion, and the will also is actually spoken of as being problematic. Outside of the spirit, we are either in darkness or in sin. If we are in our soul, trying to seek the guidance of the Lord, regardless of how much energy or effort we exercise, we will still be in darkness. As I've been recording this and now looking back and reviewing it before I upload the video, I came to a conclusion. I don't know if I'm right or not, but that behavior in the bite model actually could be made analogous to the will, because what behavior is, what you choose to listen to, how you act, who you choose to marry, where you live, where you go to school, what you major in, and those kind of things. Those behaviors that are really directed by the will are very much controlled by teachings and practices in the local church and the Lord's Recovery. So I want to read a couple more examples of that. Many times we will not give the Lord the ground in our will in certain things. We may say that we have consecrated ourselves to the Lord and to the church. And by the way, consecrating yourself to the church is absolutely not scriptural. And I have read writings shared with me through a brother that even shows that vowing, making a vow to anyone but the Lord and to your spouse, is not biblical and is actually grounds for demonic activity. We should not consecrate ourselves to the church. But even today, Witness Lee continues, but even today, we still would not be willing to surrender all the ground in our being to the Lord. Instead, we should say, Lord, this is your ground. Take it. I surrender my will. I am willing to be subdued by you. Take over my will. Right away, we will have the increase of God. Okay, so that is from The Experience of Christ as Life for the Building Up of the Church by Witness Lee. This is from Dealing with Our Inward Parts for the Growth in Life by Witness Lee, Chapter 9. Someone may say that after we deny our natural mind, natural emotion, and natural will, nothing will be left. It seems that this is true, but it is not altogether true. There is truly something left. That is the spirit. We may not be able to place it, but we still have to exercise it. We must deny the mind, emotion, and will, and try to exercise something else. Not, of course, the body. Put this into practice and try it for 2 or 3 days. Eventually, something will come out from the spirit. When I come to visit a brother, for example, I have to learn the lesson to deny my mind, my emotions, and my will. When I get into his home and begin to speak, there is nothing of the mind, emotions, or will. I have denied them and given them up. At that time, I will exercise not my body, but the hidden part, the inmost part, silently praying, Lord, what should I say? In my mind, I may have things to say. In addition, I may be desirous to talk, especially about international affairs. This is my emotion, so I must take the cross. My mind, full of Bible knowledge, must be crossed out. My emotion, which is so willing to talk about Europe, Asia, and Africa, must be put on the cross. Then after 5 minutes, I may still have nothing. So I will look to the Lord. Gradually, something comes from within, that is, from my spirit. A brother and his wife may quarrel in the morning. Even in the evening, the brother may ask someone what he should do about it. What he must do is cross out his mind, his emotion, and his will. Then he will know what to say to his wife, and whatever he says will be from the Spirit. Okay, so it goes on. And this makes it very dangerous when you are told to deny what you think, feel, and would choose, and you need to take the feeling of the body that you cannot do anything without fellowship in the body and coordination with the members. It really starts to be a high control situation without you realizing it. I just want to read, there's part of this in The Experience of Life, proofs that we know the body. This is classic word salad. He says that people who are shallow or early in their Christian life cannot know the body. And the ones with deeper experience can go on with the one who has shallower experience, but shallower ones cannot go on with deeper ones. This is a great principle in spiritual fellowship. If we have not reached the fourth stage and do not know the body, we have no way of discerning others. And then he says, this is just some word salad for you. But when you have to deny, you're taught, and I was taught even as a small child, in being in the meetings in Seattle and then as an adolescent in Anaheim, to deny my soul, my mind, my emotion, and my will. But then you're told things like this: not only can we through fellowship ascertain whether ones know the body, but the experience of knowing the body is also in itself a matter of fellowship. If one is in the body, he is in fellowship. If one is not in the body, he is not in fellowship. Most Christians have lost the position of fellowship, the reality of fellowship. This implies they don't see the body and don't live in the body. Living in fellowship, therefore, proves that we know the body. If we really know the body, we can ascertain whether others are in it or not. When others have not come to live in the reality of the body, they are not in the fellowship of the body. There is no possibility of fellowship between them and us regarding this point. We need only a contact, and we know it. Conversely, if we never sense that others are not in the body, we demonstrate that we are not in the body. We have not come to know the body. Our inner feelings when contacting others, therefore, reveal to us whether we know the body or not. Word salad. Okay? The Bible says if we walk in the light, we have fellowship with one another. There's nothing in the teachings of the Bible, Paul, John, Peter, any of the books of the Bible, Jesus, that tells us this. That word salad. Okay, back to my main point. Related to the matter of controlling information, behavior, thought, and emotion, this is also very related to the teaching of the tree of knowledge of good and evil being equivalent to death, to spiritual death, because knowledge relates to information. Knowledge of good and evil relates to information, but he also, Witness Lee and Watchman Nee, also talk about how our feelings are involved. When we are on the wrong tree, there's the sense of death, which are emotions, senses of discomfort, sadness, depression, etc. So I would like to read a little bit from the online booklet called A Universal Battle, Life versus Death, printed and available online as a PDF from Living Stream Ministry, lsm.org/media. So it says, knowledge, good and evil. The tree of death is very subtle. Although it brings forth death, it is not called the tree of death. Instead, it is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There are three related things concerning this tree: knowledge, good, and evil. Although we all appreciate knowledge and good, we do not like evil. We consider good and evil to be in two distinct categories. The concept of good and evil in the Bible, however, is different. The Bible puts both good and evil in the same category. This indicates that we should be for life, not for good or evil. According to Genesis 2, knowledge and good are put together with evil, belonging to one family. They are three sisters who work together to bring forth death, which is, of course, the opposite of life. So let's go on to page 7 of that booklet, Caring for Life. My dog is snoring. For a husband to love his wife, or for a wife to submit to her husband, is to do good. On the contrary, for a husband to hate his wife, or for a wife to rebel against her husband, is to do evil. At the end of the Bible, we again find the words life and death, but not the words love and submission. Therefore, both in the beginning of the Bible and at the end, we have life and death. In these chapters of Romans 5 through 8, Paul says nothing about husbands loving wives or wives submitting to husbands. He speaks elsewhere about these matters, but not here. Instead, in these chapters, he lays great emphasis on life and death and seems not to care about love or hate, submission or rebellion. It is possible to be very loving or submissive and yet be dead. In his economy, God does not care mainly whether we are good or evil, submissive or rebellious. He cares only whether we are living or dead. Every wife who is dead and buried in a cemetery is submissive. She never expresses her opinion. But God does not want a dead submission. He desires that we all be living. When Paul wrote this portion of the word, he was fully in the Spirit of God and in God's economy. He did not care for either good or evil, but only for life and death. Good and evil belong to the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of death. Right and wrong also belong to this tree. Right belongs to the tree of death. Good belongs to the tree of death. Thus, we should not be concerned about right and wrong, but about life and death. In God's economy, it is not sufficient merely to be good. We may be good and yet still be dead. God's economy requires that we be in life. It is possible to be dead right and livingly wrong. Do you prefer to be livingly wrong or dead right? I prefer to be living. Now, this type of speaking has been thought-annulling, thought-terminating is what they call it, thought-terminating cliches, because when you address problems that are affecting relationships, problems that affect your emotions and your mind, because there's cognitive dissonance and there's sadness and depression when you're being lied to, but leading ones even in this group will say, oh, you're on the wrong tree. If you address lies, you're on the wrong tree. I'd rather be livingly wrong, but I will say that there is no lying in God. There is, in the tree of life, with the tree of life, there is righteousness and peace and joy. There is love. You cannot separate love from God as life. And yet he says there's no mention of love. So I guess I'll end here, but there are so many examples that I could give also from my experience, from what I heard directly in meetings, what I've read, what I've observed, that there is a high control in the Lord's Recovery, the local church, the Living Stream Ministry publications, a high control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions of members, of followers of the leaders in this group. And you really can be shamed and even ostracized and labeled as rebellious if you do not accept behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion control. Before I upload this video, I just want to provide a little bit more of the scholastic background of the BITE model, the control of behavior, information, thought, and emotions. And this is from an article published in Psychiatric Times, February 5th, 2022. The authors are Stephen Hassan, Thomas Gutile, and Mansi Shah. And I will provide a link to this in the notes or the description of this video. I would like to just read under the subtitle, The BITE Model of Authoritarian Control. The BITE model presents a simpler, more concrete way to help people understand the complex phenomena entailed with cults and other forms of mind control. The model began with the realization that Leon Festinger, PhD's famous theory of cognitive dissonance held a vital theoretical key. Festinger argued that beliefs have cognitive, affective, and behavioral components. Festinger was studying a UFO-focused cult and was very curious why people did not leave the group when the spacecraft failed to appear on the designated mountain at the appointed time. In fact, the contrary occurred. Believers became even more firmly committed to their belief in aliens and the leader's knowledge about them, Festinger proposed that human beings dislike conflict and prefer to have consistency or congruence so that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are aligned. These ideas laid the foundation for all cognitive behavioral therapy. Individuals who make public commitments, behaviors that become at variance with their private beliefs, will often change their beliefs to be congruent with their behavior. Thus, influencers attempt to get others to act in certain ways so that they will think in different ways. The BITE model uses these three components: behavior, thought, and emotion, and adds information as a fourth and overlapping component. The model proposes that behavior, thought, emotional, and information control constitute four components of mind control. Human beings operate on the information they receive to function. Our brain relies on our senses to filter and evaluate data so that we can decide how to act. Sensory deprivation and information overload create conditions in which human beings cannot function optimally. Cults may suppress the real self and build a new identity over it that is controlled by the external authority or cult leader. This is a crucial insight into understanding the dissociative disorder cited in the DSM-5 5th edition. The BITE model identifies and fleshes out specific components that characterize destructive cult policies. Since 1988, tens of thousands of individuals have reported that the BITE model has helped them identify their involvement in a destructive cult, enabling them to exit and reclaim their power. Its value has been demonstrated by individuals involved in a wide variety of destructive cults and controlling relationships across the world. So it goes into the criteria of the BITE model: behavior control, to instill dependency on and obedience to the group, its ideology, and its leadership. Information control. Analyzing information is vital to understanding undue influence. An unethical group uses deception by lying outright, withholding vital information, or distorting information to make it appear more acceptable. Often all three types of lying are used, undermining the legal right of citizens to have informed consent to make decisions in their best interest. Data flow is from top downward. Senior leadership decides who needs to know what and when people should know anything at all. There can be sharp discrepancies between what members hear versus what outsiders learn. Mind control cults, especially political cults, rely on extensive use of propaganda. To be independent thinkers, people require information from a wide variety of reputable sources, which I quoted in my last video. So then thought control. Thought-terminating cliches make complex ideas into platitudinous buzzwords known only by other members. Anyway, critical questions about the leader, the doctrine, or the organization's policies are avoided or forbidden. Rational analysis, critical thinking, even constructive criticism are deemed wrong. When members express this, it is turned around on them as a weakness of character, lack of devotion. All other groups and their belief systems are illegitimate, evil, or at very best, not useful. And then emotional control. Members are required to be grateful, happy, to keep positive. They learn techniques like thought stopping and emotion stopping, mainly to block feelings of homesickness, anger toward leadership, or doubt. When they feel depressed, anxious, or fearful, they're encouraged to feel guilty and engage in practices to further surrender themselves to the great leader or to the group. Whenever there's a problem, the group and the leader are always right. It is the members' fault. Cult leaders either piggyback their programming onto pre-existing phobias or implant phobias into members' minds to such an extent that members cannot imagine being happy and fulfilled without the group. In a cult member's thinking, leaving the group equals loss of existence. So I will let you read that article if you'd like. I'll put it in the notes. So thank you for listening. And hopefully this video will actually upload and I won't have to record it again.